Welcome everybody to the Whole You podcast, another episode. I have my guest Emily today. I'm
Hi.
so excited to have her, and we're going to be talking all about our experiences with our disordered eating background, eating disorders, and kind of what led to that, so that hopefully it can help people just build awareness and to something that you can relate to if you're going through similar or you've been through similar. So we're really here to just build awareness, help others, and help others just truly come back to that like inner harmony and peace with not only food and their body but themselves. Yeah. Did you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm so glad to be here. Maya, we just like met randomly. I think it was just like an event or something, and like I feel like we just instantly just connected. And I don't know, I'm all about people's vibe, if that makes sense. And I just feel like we just instantly connected. So I'm really glad to be here and that you invited me on this podcast because I think this is going to be such a great conversation.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm so happy to have you here. And our stories are very similar too. I feel like we have a lot of parallels in our stories. And yeah, tell everybody kind of what you do as well, deeper into that and who you help.
Yeah, so I'm a registered dietitian and I have been for, I think it's like going on 4 years now. And what led me to be interested in, being a dietitian was my own background of having a not healthy relationship with food growing up. So when I was younger, or around like 10 years old, I developed an eating disorder that, I struggled with for so many years, just growing up. And having gone through like the ups and downs of that recovery process, it really made me so aware of how prevalent of an issue this is, not only just like for me, but like for other people. And I was like, I definitely feel like this is my calling to help other people because I grew through that experience of like having, I think sometimes you have to hit your lowest low to reach your highest high.
Agreed.
And I definitely had reached like rock bottom in my life at like such an early age. And yeah, it really opened my eyes to the power of fueling your body well. And, it really changed my perspective on, nourishment, like what that looks like, what that feels like. And kind of getting into it a little bit more, like I had definitely dabbled into, restriction, cutting out foods. I went vegan for a period of time during that process. Obviously, this was kind of like a mask of like, just trying to hide more foods and like things like that. Went down the path of like orthorexia, like tracking calories and macros, getting really into like lifting and fitness. And it's like that evolution of like where it started of just trying to be as small as possible and like having a lot of just body image concerns really stemmed into like the control side of things in college, where it was like instead of just like not eating, it was like, well, I'm eating, but I'm like using exercise as like my new identity. So going through that transformation as well. And then I hit a period where after that, I kind of struggle with more of like the opposite of like restricting and binging and feeling like I just needed to hoard all my calories for the end of the day. And yeah, so that was a really just rocky history of like my relationship with food until I reached my breaking point to where I was like, okay, I can't keep doing this anymore. Like, this is not healthy. And I can't also pursue my career as a dietitian if I don't take care of myself first.
Yeah.
So in college, I had just like this like light bulb moment of like, okay, I don't want the rest of my life to look like this. I know this is not something that I envision like the happiest and healthiest version of myself being. So that is when I did like the internal work that I was avoiding for so long, to truly heal my own relationship with food. And yeah, ever since then, like ever since I had that like awakening myself, is when my relationship with food just started to improve year by year. And now I do like what I absolutely love doing of like helping women not, I mean, if they are in that road, but like not go down that road and show them to how to have a healthy relationship with food.
Yeah, I love that so much. And yeah, something that's like a huge focus that I kind of want to tap into as well is almost like how a lot of food struggles and disordered eating patterns and things of that nature, a lot of the times has nothing to do with the food itself. And I had a very huge realization of that throughout my journey. Kind of my journey as well was a very long, lengthy, poor relationship with food that was masked in a lot of ways through control and like the need to be quote unquote healthy or like perfectly healthy, which was really just like orthorexia in disguise. And I really, same thing, it kind of started at a very, very young age of, it started with like my body image and me becoming super identified with that. Because I was seen as like the athletic girl who was like strong and fast. And that was like my entire identity. I was on the track team and my whole worth was put into like how fast can I run, how many like trophies or like, you know, accomplishments can I make in track. And it was my entire identity. I had nothing else but that. And then people started to compliment my body. And I was like, oh, this is another way I can get that external validation. And I recognized later on in my journey, as I was zooming out and doing that deep inner work, that it was really just my way of getting that external validation all along, because I felt like no matter what I did, I was never enough. And the truth is, you have to find that internal validation from within to truly find that peace and harmony with yourself. And we use things like food and exercise and all of these things to continuously just keep us stuck in this pattern of external validation. And it can be a really toxic cycle. And for me, it lasted for years. I mean, endless toxic cycles of binging, restricting, anorexia, like completely starving myself to the point where I almost died. I got to like the lowest body weight or body fat I've ever been, and down to like 80 something pounds. And I remember one night I was literally laying in bed and I literally felt my heart like stopping. And I was just kind of to this point where I didn't care because I was so deep in my disorder and my whole life was my eating disorder that I was kind of like, what's the point anyway? I was so depressed, so alone, so just like scared to be me, to the point where I didn't even see the point at all. And this just really was my complete catalyst of my life, where I started to turn my life around and recognize that life itself is a gift and I'm here to be me. And from there, it's just been this deep, deep self-discovery journey that there's so much purpose in all of that pain, even though it was so painful and so hard. And I don't wish that on anyone else, you know? However, I've been able to take all of this and kind of like what you said and how all of these struggles you've been through, you're able to turn that pain into purpose by helping others who are going through the same thing. And that's exactly same reason for me as to why I do what I do now. And it actually started for me in kind of a similar field of guiding people with their relationship with food and their body and exercise. And that's where I started in my coaching career. That was what I aligned most with at the time. And as I started diving deeper and deeper into the inner healing work and the inner healing realm and spirituality and connecting to your true essence and your true self, I just fell deeper and deeper into that. And now it's like I can see the bigger picture of my entire journey. And I recognize that it's so, so important to kind of start with that like relationship with food and relationship with your body and relationship with yourself, right? And then like once you're ready to like take it to that next level and go deeper inward, it's so worth it. It's hard, but it's so worth it. And you're able to kind of zoom out and recognize again that, whoa, none of this actually had to do with the food itself or my body. It actually had everything to do with like how I viewed myself and my reality, right?
100%.
So yeah, I'd love to hear like your journey with your inner work and story, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, for sure. And girl, I completely relate to that because I know not everybody has the same journey and not everybody gets to like the super like low point where like they feel like they're dying. Like I felt that way too, like when my eating disorder was like at its worst. But I
Mm.
just, I hold space for people that like don't ever reach that point because,
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many people who, they
Mm.
like they're struggling, but their body like never gets to that point, which is also, I
Yeah,
feel like
that's
it's so
huge.
huge.
Yeah.
But no, when it comes back to like that deep inner work, that's where I say like healing your relationship with food is so messy, and there's like
Mm.
layers to it because I think, and this is my experience of working with women on this issue. It's a lot of people just want to focus on the food.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Just the
how
food,
can
yeah.
I feel more in control with food? Like, how much should I
Mm.
eat? How do I know when to eat? And they're
Yeah.
just so focused on food. And it's
Yeah.
like, in order for us to truly heal that relationship with food, we can't forget about the relationship that you have with your body,
Mm-hmm.
the relationship that you have with exercise, the relationship that you have with others, because all of that does play a huge role in your relationship with food and like what got you there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think for a lot of people, it's perfectionism, it's a need for control, it's unresolved trauma, it's the body image issues. Like there's just so many layers to it,
Layers, yeah.
and that's what I love about like what I do too. It's like we
Yeah.
get to really unpack all of that to see like, okay, maybe we just need to take a step back and like
Mm.
address the entire situation. And then like
Yeah.
once you get like really clear as to like why is this so hard? Like why is food such a big issue for me? Like why is it like such a big deal to
Mm-hmm.
me? And like why is my body such a big deal to me? Like once we can like really uncover that, it starts to make so much more sense why
Mm.
that having that disordered relationship to food isn't really what you want. It's just become this thing that you use to stay in control.
Yeah.
So that was like kind of part of my own awakening, is like realizing it's not really about the food. And we can definitely love food, we can definitely have a passion for eating, but it shouldn't be the center of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And like when
Mm-hmm.
food's the center of your life, it's you don't make space for anything else. Like we don't
Yeah.
make space for relationships, we don't have time all of a sudden for anything else. Like I remember my hobbies used to be literally going on Pinterest and like saving all these recipes that I would never make. I got
Mm-hmm.
into baking. Like I was like a somebody who was like, before I started my account as a dietitian on Instagram, I was like a food blogger.
Mm-hmm.
So like my intense like focus was always just on posting food, on like
Mm.
what I was eating, sharing this with others.
Yeah.
And it was like, looking back on it now, I'm like, I was like this foodie, and I put that in air quotes, like foodie, but it was really just my fixation on food.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that I feel like is something that I see so often with a lot of
Mm.
women that I work with. It's like, how is food becoming like your entire personality? And this can also be said with exercise, because I think a lot of people go down this road like I did, where if your identity is not within food, it's within exercise and like how your body looks as a result
Yeah.
of doing said exercise.
Oh yeah.
So I know you and I have gone down this road where we
Mm-hmm.
got really into like the aesthetic of lifting.
Yeah.
That's okay. I have lots of thoughts
Yeah.
on this because I feel like with social media these days,
Mm-hmm.
that fitness space is so strong to where I feel like so many women pressure themselves
Mm-hmm.
to try to fit into that mold of like,
Agreed.
I'm a fit girl, like I shop at Lulu, I do X like this person's workout plans, and it's
Mm.
almost like your entire life becomes dedicated to trying to achieve this body.
Yep. Exactly.
It's like a different type of disorder.
Oh yeah, and that was like me to the extent of once I was like recovering and I felt fully recovered, I was just carrying on until I started doing again the deep inner work of actually uncovering these patterns in my identities. Because again, it comes down to that your beliefs, your identities, your perception. And when we're constantly, like you said, putting food on a pedestal or our body on a pedestal and not being like our end all be all, like, I need this or I'm not going to be happy. I need this to be perfect. I need this. I need this. That being your entire focus of your life, like you were saying, it's literally just masking the disorder in another way.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I was healthy, and that's why I love that you brought
Mm-hmm.
up you don't need to like reach this point of almost dying to be considered unhealthy or like in an eating disorder. right? Because yes, I reached that point, but I would say I was struggling all way more around all the other years of my life that I was actually healthy because I was able to mask it easier, right? I was able to mask all these behaviors and patterns and the fact that I didn't feel whole as I was and who I was. And in that was the root of my eating disorder, was like that lack mentality of never feeling enough in me. So I was constantly searching for an identity outside of me. And same with the body image. It was like, especially because I became a personal trainer. And that was a huge, and this is something I haven't talked like too much about. Because it's very common. Like I've spoken to a lot of personal trainers and fitness coaches that it's actually really common for fitness coaches and trainers to feel this like identity with like, I need to look a certain way so I can quote unquote fit the part. And it becomes this toxic cycle of putting your body image on this pedestal to where it's your entire life. And sadly, that's exactly what happened to me. And even though I was helping others and like this way that I was actually like not doing so great internally myself, even though I was fit, I wasn't happy. And that's what really led me to transitioning my career entirely as well, was I recognized that during my deep awakening of like, whoa, I've been putting my body image and food on this pedestal and it's been running my entire life, even though I'm quote unquote healthy from how I feel and how I look physically, internally, I'm not doing too great. And that I feel like is the gap there, you know, aligning again. And that's why I became a mind, body, soul mentor, because it's all about aligning your mind, body, and soul. It's not just about your body, right? Your mind and your soul are, I would say, even more important, right? Your body is your vehicle of life, and it's so important for it to be healthy and thriving and feeling good. However, your mind and your soul are what create your life, right? Your perception and how you view your reality and how you show up and your energy and your essence. And so tapping into that was how I feel like I was able to heal, was to dive deep into who I actually am and starting to uncover and peel back these layers, like you were talking about as well, peeling back the layers and asking myself, who am I without my body image? Who am I without food? Who am I without being a personal trainer? Who am I without all of these things that I've put so much worth into? And yeah.
I love that. No, I totally agree. And I feel like I think a lot of people also kind of get stuck with this like identity piece. It's like, so if I don't have all these things, who am I?
Yep.
And that can be something that, you know, with the clients that I work with becomes, it's like another hurdle in that recovery process, because it's like, who am I without that identity?
Yeah.
And so we have to really explore that, you know, like, who do you want to be? Who do you want to show up as in your life? Like when you envision yourself, where do you see yourself the happiest? Like, and kind of what you mentioned too about like what healthy looks like. Just because somebody looks like they are fit and healthy doesn't mean that internally that they're not struggling. Because I remember when I looked like so super fit, like, and I'm talking like you could see my abs, like I was just like this, yeah. I was like, so, like I didn't have my period, like my digestion was just the worst. Like I wasn't sleeping. I was a wreck inside, but like in college, I was always get praised for like, oh my gosh, you're so dedicated. Like, look how strong you are. And like, I think that positive reinforcement that you get kind of keeps you from wanting to explore another identity, because you're afraid of not receiving that praise.
Totally.
And I feel like now that I'm healthy and now that I'm like, have like healed my hormones and got myself just to like a really good place, it's when you get compliments when you are truly healthy, and I'm talking like truly healthy, when you are taking care of yourself, your relationship with food's in a really good place, your relationship with exercise is in a good place, the energy that you give off is so different.
It is.
And I think that's something that, you know, you might fear of, like, what does life look like when I don't have fitness as like this way to be who I am? But it's like, you know, you're opening space for this new, better version of you that you may not know who she is yet. But I'll tell you, like, I would have never started my business if I was still stuck in that mentality. Like, I wouldn't even have the time or energy to do so.
Yep.
So it's like, there's like almost like no words to describe like how good you can feel when you're so used to feeling like shit. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's just, yeah, like I mean, you think better, you just feel better, like, and your energy's so different. Like I just remember being such a closed off human
Mm-hmm.
before.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like I just
Yeah.
remember like I wouldn't talk to people. I would felt like so insecure.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like such this mind game because you feel like you're developing more confidence within yourself because you're looking the part, but it's like deep down,
Oh yeah.
you're like the most insecure person.
Yep. Exactly. That is
So,
so, so huge because your external reality is just a reflection of your internal reality, right? And so when you are lacking confidence and you don't love yourself and you feel this like void that you're constantly trying to fill outside of you by external validation, getting praise from others, like you were saying, or just constantly seeking these like spikes of dopamine,
mhm.
right? And that can lead to a whole nother topic as well. But yeah, it's like that constant seeking outside of us for fulfillment, right? When we don't have that internal fulfillment, of course we're not able to connect with others deeper. Of course we're not able to open our heart and like let love in or give love fully
Mhm.
because we aren't doing that for ourselves, right?
Mhm.
And same, I was completely like my social life was non existent.
Mhm.
All the years of my disordered eating and eating disorder, I literally like I would push people out because I wasn't allowing people in. I
Mhm.
was so insecure in who I was that I just consistently was subconsciously pushing people out. Even if people were trying to come in, it was
Mhm.
like I wouldn't allow them in. And it's because we're not allowing ourselves in. We're not looking inward and actually sitting with who we are and accepting that. So, how are we able to let others accept us and see us fully if we aren't doing that for ourselves? Right. And I was, even though, same, I was like getting this praise for looking a certain way and being super fit, like all these years and being so dedicated and like disciplined. Yeah, it fed into that pattern over and over again. And I was so unhappy and still
Mhm.
so insecure. And I actually had the worst relationship with my body throughout all those years. Because even though I was getting all this praise and external validation, I still hated my body and hated myself.
Mhm.
And it was just this endless cycle of just like self sabotage, self, criticism, and just constantly avoiding
Mhm.
it all. And it was just like I was creating this narrative in my head like it wasn't there, creating this story to myself like it wasn't there. And even about my social life and my social situation, I would like create these narratives and stories in my head like, oh no, it's fine. Like I'm good. I don't need people in my life. I have my boyfriend. And at the time, that's a whole nother story. But I also, in my relationship I had through my eating disorder in high school, I was just like seeking that external validation from him entirely, like sucking the energy, like that love, like a vampire, literally,
Mhm.
and not giving it to myself and using that as a crutch to like not go deeper and go inward and love myself, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
that continued too after as well with my next boyfriend. And it really, it was a challenge for me to actually step back and recognize, like, whoa, I just need to love me. I just need to get to know me. I just need to accept me. And again, asking myself those hard questions of like, who am I without all of this? And actually seeing, because that's the thing, I think that's the hardest part for people is seeing things for how they actually are, right? Because when
Mhm.
you're deep in it, we're in such denial of everything we're going through and we create all these lies and stories. And even though everybody in our life is like concerned, especially when you're like going through it and it's visible or people are worried about you because you're like not showing up to social events or whatever the case might be, and you're getting that, people are concerned about you, you're hearing people being concerned about you. Even in that, like, did you experience that like kind of denial phase of like not opening up and not really seeing things for how they were?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially I feel like in the beginning when I was like super young, I was like, I don't have a problem. Like,
Yeah.
what problem? And then obviously, like for me, it was very noticeable, like that I was struggling because like I'm a natural like small person, so like when you're not eating, like you just, it's very noticeable. And like my parents knew, my friends knew. So it's like whenever I was like really struggling, like I knew people knew, but like I didn't feel like I was unhealthy. It's like you don't feel it, you don't see it clearly until you look back at pictures and you're like, oh my gosh, like I look so unhealthy. Like I was not taking care of myself. But the kicker here is taking care of yourself. Yes, it's physical, but it's also mental. Like if you're not taking care of yourself mentally, like that is going to show up in just how you also take care of yourself physically. Like I honestly like was not attentive to my needs. I was just I didn't I it's goes back to again how you feel about yourself. It's like if you don't really love yourself, you're not going to do things that show that you love yourself. And like all the things that I was doing were really a result of how much self-hatred I had and like how much I didn't want to be me. It's like, well, I don't like this part of my body, so I'm going to try everything in my power to change it. Like I am going to try everything in my power to be who I'm not, because for so long I didn't feel like I was accepted for who I was. And this goes back obviously to like a lot of the childhood trauma that a lot of people experience. It's like if you're not really sure why you're struggling with food, take a look at your past. Take a look at were you bullied as a kid? You know, like did you not have an open relationship with your parents? Like what were your friendships like? Like what was the pressure to not be who you are? Like why didn't you feel safe? And so when we can like really unpack that and like unpeel the layers, like it makes a lot of sense why you do the things that you do.
Exactly. And that exactly was the root of all the struggles I had gone through. I mean, I wore countless masks, and my eating disorder was just one of those masks. You know, it was another mask for me to not be, like you said, who I actually was. It was like I was using it to hide who I actually was and change who I was, because who I was as a kid didn't feel like it was enough and it was rejected, right? And I was bullied. I was bullied so hard, and I went to this really, really small school. I mean, in sixth grade, I literally had 3 other kids in my class, like 3 and 1 boy. So that led to a lot, because that group of kids were not very nice. Like we were all friends and really close, but I was the one they would pick on. I was the one that would like make everybody laugh. I was like the jokester, but I was also the one that they would make fun of. And I was kind of, you know, had like baby weight through my younger years. And I would always get called chubby, and I would always get called ugly. And that really was the root of me having these deep rooted beliefs. When I got to middle school, I had lost all my baby weight, and I was actually really thin, to where the boys would call me flat. It was always about how I looked, and I would still get called ugly. And then I started wearing makeup to like mask, and I was like 13, and I would wear layers and layers of makeup. I mean, layers of foundation, mascara, all of it, like literally a mask to cover myself up. And that's kind of where the pattern of me wanting to look a certain way started. I became addicted to makeup to the point where I literally was fixing my makeup like 10 times a day throughout school. Like anytime I would go to the bathroom, I would spend like 10 minutes fixing my makeup. And this was when I was 13 and 14 years old. Like I was young. And then from there, that's when I got to high school, I still carried that. And as I was wearing the makeup, I started getting attention from boys. And that was where I was like, oh, this is the secret. I just need to look a certain way in order to get approval. I just need to look a certain way in order to be liked and seen and validated. And then I started to use that external validation from receiving male attention to fill the void. And that is a whole nother story that I won't even get into. But then from there, got to high school and started track. That became my identity. I started getting praised for that, started to get fit, and I started getting praised for that too. So then I was like, oh, okay, so I'm getting praised for my body now. Like this is the first time I've ever gotten praised for my body. I'm going to take it to the next level. I'm going to have the best body. I'm going to get fit. I'm going to like run 5 miles a day and just see what happens. So that summer that I made that decision was like my sophomore year of high school summer. I literally ran 5 miles a day. and stopped eating. Like I literally would have like one meal a day. And it was just that extreme, like this is what I need to do in order to get validation. So I'm going to do everything I can to get that validation. And it all stemmed back from me just not getting that validation and acceptance and love as a kid. So then it just carried on into the extreme. And I've recognized that, you know, a shadow of mine or a pattern of mine is being addictive or like obsessive about things. And it's something that I've just had to like accept and face and work through so that I can start to just become aware of it and how it shows up in my reality. Because again, everything starts with awareness, right? When you become aware of these patterns that you have, it's not about judging and shaming yourself and putting yourself down for it, because that's literally just going to make things worse, right? And we're just going to continue the sabotaging cycle. Whereas if we build awareness out of love and like willingness to change, we can see the pattern, the shadow, the, you know, the things that we're kind of stuck in that feel like, oh, this is my whole life, but we don't really notice it. It's kind of just like this subconscious pattern that we're doing. Until we build awareness of it out of love, then we can start to make these shifts and just start to notice day to day, like, oh, I'm having these thoughts, like when this happens, and this triggers me when this happens. And we can start to connect the dots and recognize that we are not our patterns, we are not our shadows, we are not our thoughts. We're just the observer of them. And we can start to just like make these small shifts and ultimately create our reality by just starting with the awareness factor and seeing things for how it is, zooming out and being real with ourselves. Because the truth is, you know, a lot of this, like we were talking about the avoidance and the denial, we create lies, we create stories. We keep lying to ourselves and pretending like we don't know what's going on. When in reality, we do. We just gotta like sit with it and face it and build awareness. And then from there, it's like, whoa, this is actually what's been going on, sitting with your truth of the now and being honest with yourself. You know, like, what am I actually feeling right now? What patterns have I been stuck in that aren't serving me anymore? And from there, you're able to just start making these shifts. Like, how does this show up in my reality? And starting to just become more and more aware of what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something I was gonna say to that, but like you just went down, and my brain was like, I don't know what I'm gonna say. But no, you're fine. I loved your story. But yeah, so I think you were talking about something like, you know, just craving that validation, and I think that's really what a lot of people are chasing when it comes to just doing all these things again for control. Like it's like, control. What am I getting out of this? There's something that you're getting out of it, you know, whether that mean you're feeling a dopamine release whenever you're restricting or binging or exercising, you know, there's something that you are getting out of it, which is why it's so hard to break that cycle. It's like, it's doing something for you. If it wasn't doing anything for you, you wouldn't be doing it. But that, I think, is where people kind of get stuck. It's like, how is this serving you? And like, is it actually serving you?
Is it actually serving you?
Like that's honestly like the bigger question. It's like, it might feel like it, but there's a need that's not being met somewhere. And so if you like zoom out and look at your life, like if you look at how your relationship with food is actually affecting your life, like if you're not happy, there needs to be something that changes. And I think until you're ready to face that part like of the reality of it, like nothing's ever going to change. Like, and it's really unfortunate because I actually know some people, I actually have like a family member. She's a friend of a family member that she's had an eating disorder like her entire life. And it's something that she's never going to face because she doesn't want to. So it's like, whenever I see her, you just know that she's struggling. And it's like, it's always a choice. You know, we have that choice to make, to change, like and that's obviously like, so why there are coaches and dietitians and mentors, because it's like, if you're not ready to believe in yourself that change is possible for you, sometimes you need to put that trust into somebody to help guide you until you can believe that in yourself, until you start to see the glimpses of what getting out of that cycle can actually bring to your life. And that's why I think like taking baby steps to get there can be so helpful, because it's like it's not going to be this like overnight transformation for you. Like
Yeah.
breaking patterns and breaking those habits is so difficult, because it's almost like you take a couple steps forward and like a couple steps back, because
Yeah.
it's like this actually happened to me quite a bit. It's like I would take a couple steps forward and break my comfort zone, and then like that felt scary, and so I would be like, okay, I need to go hide now, and I need to go back to like what I was doing, because
Yeah.
I don't want to experience more change. That was enough. So like I'm
Yeah.
done with that, and like I'm gonna go back to my safety.
Mm.
So I think like again, having somebody to kind of push you to keep going, because over that initial fear, over those initial like changes, is like
Yeah.
a better life for you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. On the other side of your fear is always exactly what you need.
Yeah.
And especially when you're coming from that controlling energy,
Mhm.
right? Of needing to control everything and everything needing to be perfect. Of course, we're not going to want change, right? Even if we know that the change is so good for us and exactly what we need, it still feels so uncomfortable because we're so used to like keeping everything the same, even though in reality, the only constant in life is change, literally. And so when we're able to embrace the changes and the cycles and the shifts and all of that, I feel like that in itself is such a huge part of like, that was such a huge part of my recovery, was starting to actually embrace the change and notice that change is good. Change doesn't have to be this scary, you know, I mean, it's going to feel scary. Like, I feel like everybody, because our ego, right? Our ego is our humanness about us, right? And we're here to be humans. We're here to experience the human experience. And with that, our ego is our friend. It really is. And we can use our ego in a lot of ways to help us and build new patterns, build new habits that serve us, right? But it also, its number one job is to keep us the same and keep us safe, right? Which again serves a purpose. However, noticing your ego patterns and like, okay, my ego right now, this is what safe feels like. It's going to feel uncomfortable to step out of that comfort zone, right? Like noticing that it's going to, becoming aware that it's going to, accepting that it's going to feel uncomfortable and pushing through that uncomfortableness, you know, and I totally agree. And Emily's your girl.
So I work with women, like I like to consider disordered eating like it's a spectrum. So there are people who really have like a deep rooted eating disorder and like restricting, binge eating, binging and purging, like all those types of things. And there's also people who are in this like quasi recovery state where like maybe they're not at their worst, but they're not where they want to be when it comes to being fully recovered and having this healthy relationship with food in their bodies. And then there's also the people who they have never been diagnosed with an eating disorder, but they just struggle with just their relationship with food. So chronic dieters, like people who have been yo-yo dieting and just kind of like are sick of being in that cycle of just again self-sabotage, restricting, tracking food. Like disordered eating really does run on a spectrum. And I always like to open that up to people that like, you know, if you feel like your relationship with food is impacting you from being your happiest and healthiest self, I'm your girl, because you know we cover all these things. And like I said, I like to consider myself not like typical dietitians who just like put you on a meal plan, like give you just like a blanket plan, and like I don't feel like that's really effective. So, you know, we really dive into things together. Like we really dive into those layers like we talked about, like that actually need to be made in order to fully heal that relationship with food. So yeah, that's basically who I work with.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And that's so powerful because, like you said, having that not only support and like guidance, because, like you said, you're a reflection of what they can achieve or, you know, where they can go within their journey in their own way, right? As coaches, I believe we're like mirrors for our clients. And just us being us and sharing our stories and what we've been through, and also just our energy that we emulate as healthy and happy individuals who've been through it and been through the process ourselves, we're just mirrors of what you can do as well, you know? And it's so beautiful, like, because we've been able to turn our pain into purpose, like we were talking about before, because again, we have been through it. And having somebody too who has been through it is so healing in itself, because then you realize, 'cause I know for me through that whole journey, that was the biggest catalyst, was finding my first coach. And I was like, whoa, this person gets me. Like, this is the first person who has such a similar story as me that I've met. And I'm open to like letting her in and help me because she gets it, you know? And I think just having somebody who's been through a similar process is so powerful, because again, humility, vulnerability, all of it is so powerful in the healing journey, because you recognize you're not alone. And if somebody else can do it, you can do it too, right? And so beautiful. I love that. And yeah, I would say asking for help is like a huge step too, and like recovery or just healing in general, whatever journey you're going through, you know what I mean? Like, just asking for help and being open to that is a really, really hard step, especially when we're coming from that controlling background of needing everything to be controlled by you. Giving somebody else kind of this like permission to like also guide you is scary. But it's just that layer of, again, stepping out of your comfort zone that feels like, you know, your safety right now, like you're in your comfort zone of not asking for help. It's just stepping out of that comfort zone. And again, on the other side of you stepping outside of your comfort zone, and on the other side of that fear, is almost always exactly what you need, right? And I like to say, let your fear kind of be your compass in a way, right? Like, if you're feeling that fear, lean into it. And not if like something's actually scary and you probably shouldn't do it, and you're like, your body's just protecting you from it. Not the same thing. But when you know that something is meant for you, and you know you want this change, and you know you want this shift, but it just feels uncomfortable, leaning into that fear, feeling the fear, doing it anyways, on the other side of that is almost always exactly what you need, you know? So,
and I always like to think like life is so short, you know, and tomorrow's never promised. And so taking action now, even if it's scary action, I think it's almost like a non-negotiable. Like, if you really do want your life to change and want something to improve for you, like, do it now. Because like, again, you know, next year's not promised, tomorrow's not promised. And I truly can say that for myself, like, I honestly don't really have much memory of like those years. It's a blur, because it's like, what really was I focused on? And it's like, that's time you don't get back. But think about how much time you gain back in your life once you clear the fog, and like once you realize like, oh, that doesn't have to be my identity anymore.
That's huge. And that was like the basis of my spiritual awakening too, was recognizing, whoa, I haven't been living. I've been alive, but I haven't been living. And there's a difference. There's a difference. Like, to actually be living is to actually be present and to actually be here in the moment. And we're constantly fixated on what we're not, or what we're not doing, or what we should be doing, or the past, and like being stuck in the future in the past, and we're not here in the moment. Our life is just a collection of moments. And when we're not able to be present with the people we love and have these experiences because we're too afraid of what we're going to eat, or what our body looks like, or whatever it might be, are we actually living? Or are we just creating this facade for ourselves and putting on all these masks and not embracing who we truly are? And I truly believe the core of everybody's purpose, I feel like I say this every podcast, but it is to be the fullest expression of you. And if you aren't doing that, what's the point? Who are you living for? Right? And it's so fun to be you know? It's so fun to truly embrace your natural essence, your true essence, and recognize that that's enough. Life itself is the gift. And you have everything you already need right here, right now. Everything else is just extra. It's just overflowing your cup.
Right? Right? I love that.
And do you have anything else you want to share or tap into today?
I don't know. I can't think of anything to add. I think this was like a really good conversation.
Yeah,
I feel like we touched on so many really important parts of just like your relationship with food and just how that really does have an impact on your entire life. So this is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And if anybody is struggling or has struggled with things or just relates to anything we've talked about, Emily, again, is your girl for all things relationship with food, relationship with yourself and body. And she's been through it. Her story is so inspiring and she's helped so many women. And I know she's just going to continue to do that even better.
Thanks.
So, yes. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. And I'll see you next week. Okay, bye.